Hey guys, welcome back! Let's take a look at some of the best Sega games that failed to get the attention they deserved. If you missed the glory days of the developer, then here are 20 games that will remind you why to be this good it takes Sega.
Fantasy Zone: The Maze.
If you're expecting a shooter like previous games in the series, then prepare for disappointment. Fantasy Zone: The Maze, or Opa Opa as it was known in Japan, is actually a surprisingly enjoyable Pac-Man clone. Set against the backdrops of popular locations from the Fantasy Zone, you must collect all the on-screen coins while avoiding enemies. The nice touch here, though, is that said enemies spawn from an ever-filling portal, and if you don't fly over it, more monsters are added to the fray. It's quirky, but highly enjoyable all the same.
Cosmic Smash.
Sega.
Simple but stylish is the best way to sum up this Dreamcast arcade conversion. Playing like a cross between Squash and Breakout, Cosmic Smash featured Tron-like visuals and a mesmerizing hypnotic gameplay. You're essentially placed in a futuristic squash court and must remove a set amount of blocks, initially with 80 seconds on the clock, before you can move to the next stage. Full of multiple routes, excellent music and a surprisingly complex 2-button system, Cosmic Smash is a must-play game, which passed many peoples by due to it only appearing in Japan.
Alien 3: The Gun.
Making an arcade game based on the plot of Alien 3 sounds like a terrible idea. Sega thought so as well, so it decided to instead make up its own story. It's very loosely tied into Paul Fincher's film, but the plot's not important. What is important is that you get to spray bullets into all sorts of nasty xenomorphs as you make your way through gloomy corridors and scary open spaces. There's a nice variety to the different aliens you encounter, and they often attack in swarms, meaning you ideally want to play through with a friend. It may have a color palette as gloomy as Fincher's movie, but it's great fun to play.
Pepenga Pengo.
Pepenga Pengo was only released in Japan, meaning many Mega Drive owners sadly won't have experienced it. This is a pity, as it's an excellent little puzzler that massively improves on the arcade original. Pepenga Pengo introduces power-ups, cute bosses, and a new and improved cooperative mode, taking into account that the original had 2 players taking alternate turns, so it makes clearing later stages far easier. Spread across 10 worlds, Pepenga Pengo is an excellent update that greatly improves on the original game. It also features the original arcade game as an excellent Bomberman-style battle mode that can support up to 4 players.
Panzer Dragoon Saga.
While many will have heard of Saga, I'd bet that you've not experienced it. Released late in the Saturn's lifetime, it limped into Paul Land as the Saturn was in its final death throes, and as a result received an extremely limited print run. The same thing happened stateside, meaning English copies now tend to command insane prices. I'd support shelling out though, as Panzer Dragoon Saga is a staggeringly good game. Unlike the first 2 games in the series, Panzer Dragoon Saga is an RPG and consists of sections where you're flying your dragon or running around as protagonist Edge. The combat uses a stylish battle system that features dramatic sweeping camera angles and revolves around 3 action gauges. Experience points are also earned, which allow your dragon to morph into a number of different forms. With the recent revelation that the original source code has been lost, I'd suggest you seek out a Saturn original rather than wait for a re-release that may never come.
Gunvalkyrie.
Although it's a highly westernized console, there were plenty of hidden gems on Microsoft's Xbox. One such example is the highly underrated Gunvalkyrie from Smilebit, which was originally planned for release on Sega's Dreamcast. It's worth noting though that, like Piano 3, another misunderstood gem from around the same time period, Gunvalkyrie is certainly not an easy game to master. This is mainly due to its complex control system that has the left stick controlling movement while the right handles aiming. Clicking the left stick lets you boost in the air for a short period of time, while clicking the right allows you to make useful quick turns. It feels clunky at first and horribly awkward when walking, but once you master the boost system, it turns into a completely different game, giving you graceful control over your mech suit and letting you zip around stages without ever touching the ground. This in itself is incredibly useful, because Gunvalkyrie is swarming with deadly insects and gigantic bosses that need to be taken down as quickly as possible. It's like another video game equivalent of Starship Troopers, and is a classic arcade-styled blaster that gives more the more you put into it.
Galactic Protector.
Another Master System game starring Fantasy Zone's Opa Opa. This time, however, it didn't make it outside of Japan, due to it requiring the pedal control, which was also exclusive to the region. Taking control of Opa Opa, you must circle a planet and protect it from being hit from incoming space debris. It's a fast and frantic game that's built around the rare peripheral.
Confidential Mission.
Confidential Mission is, in my opinion, one of Sega's most underrated light gun games. Sitting in the shadow of House of the Dead and Virtua Cop, its knowingly corny spy theme and variety of stages are what helps to separate it from its more famous peers. Based around a mission to retrieve a stolen satellite, Confidential Mission's levels takes you to some varied and amusing locales that feature branching sections, inventive enemy attack waves, and quick time events that test not only your aim, but your firing speed. The game later received a really good Dreamcast port that added a sizable training mode to practice aim, justice shoots, and combo chaining.
Who are you?
Howard Gibson.
Panic.
Surely one of the strangest games ever designed. Panic, also known as Switch, finds a boy and his dog on a mission to destroy a virus that is causing all the machines in the world to malfunction, making switches potentially deadly. Panic is basically a trial and error point-and-click game where there is no way to determine the outcome of your actions and no real consequence if they're wrong, other than getting to watch an amusing animation. It's an interactive cartoon, a series of scenes where in each you are presented with a choice of buttons and must try to guess the correct one to press to progress to the next scene. Bonkers, but the humor and animations ensure it's always entertaining.
Initial D Street Stage.
Based on a popular manga series, the Initial D franchise is virtually unheard of outside of Japan, due to Sega not releasing any home console releases in Europe. While it's been released on numerous consoles, typically Sony ones, it's the PSP version that beats the others. It's an excellent arcade racer with superb handling and a neat tuning mechanic that revolves around the use of trading cards. Although the game is in Japanese, the Asian version boasts an English manual. It's actually surprisingly pretty easy to understand regardless, with the language barrier hardly an issue in playing the game. You can simply enjoy one of the best racers to be found on Sony's handheld.
Ghost Squad.
Sega was king of the light gun genre, and anyone who thinks otherwise is clearly wrong, or wouldn't know a good light gun game if it was wearing a neon cat suit and beat them on the eyeball. Sega made the genre theirs by blending character and humor with exhilarating set pieces, and in doing so helped breathe life into the genre. Ghost Squad is one of its later offerings to the genre. Cut from a similar cloth as Virtual Cop and Confidential Mission, the Cops and Spies give way to a military Ghost Recon-esque theme, with players leading a team of special op types. Its mission is composed of 3 stages that compressed branching segments and mini-objectives, while the cabinet had a hefty gun that offered various fire types. An arcade follow-up, Ghost Squad Evolution, came in 2007. It featured new stages and a gun with even more functionality, now allowing you to actuate hand-to-hand combat attacks and enter night vision mode. Ghost Squad eventually saw a late home conversion for the Wii, courtesy of Polygon Magic. It bolstered the game's arcade mode into additional play modes, including 4-player support and a bevy of weapons and amusing costumes to unlock.
Master of Darkness.
Seen by many as the Master System's Castlevania, this action platformer shares a number of parallels with Konami's revered horror series. You play the role of a psychologist trying to get to the bottom of a spate of grisly murders. This investigation takes him to several spooky locations, including a cemetery, castle, and a house of wax, and sees him battling vampire bats, zombies, and evil spirits. With lovely detailed graphics, bags of atmosphere, and a nice variety of weapons, enemies and bosses, Master of Darkness is a hidden gem on the Sega Master System's library. As appearing quite late in its commercial life, few gamers got to experience it.
OutRun 2019.
The Mega Drive conversion of OutRun was mediocre. Its port of Turbo OutRun was utterly shambolic. So where do you go for a good OutRun fix on the console? Well, I'd recommend OutRun 2019. As its title unsubtly implies, this sort of sequel places the racing in the future, with vehicles capable of reaching silly speeds. The standard forking stages and checkpoint chasing gameplay remains, but is spread across 4 different courses. Detailed visuals, a catchy soundtrack, a comfortable difficulty, solid controls and speed make it by far the best OutRun game on the Mega Drive, and there's not a pretty blonde girl in sight.
Ninja Gaiden.
After acquiring the rights of the Ninja Gaiden license from Tecmos for its machines, Sega put 3 different games into development, one each for the Master System, Game Gear and Mega Drive. The Mega Drive game never saw official release, but the 8-bit games did, although only the Sega Master System in Europe. Both are worth seeking out, but it's the Game Gear version that I'm highlighting here. It's a fast and ferocious side-scrolling action game with some nice level design and presentational touches, including some nicely animated cutscenes. With only a handful of stages, it is a bit on the short side, but there's no doubt that it captures the essence of Ninja Gaiden on the portable.
Arabian Fight.
Sega made a fair amount of scrolling fighters, but this fine effort from 1992 remains one of my favorites. Arabian Fight is designed for up to 4 players and boasts an Arabian theme. There's a straightforward 3-button setup, similar to Golden Axe, while the 4 main characters actually play significantly different to each other, offering a fair amount of variety. You fight your way through the gorgeous looking stages that riff off all sorts of traditional Arabian 1001 Nights-esque tales. It still makes this list not only because it's an immensely satisfying brawler, but also because it features stunning scaling effects that made it stand out from many similar games of the time. It's not original by any stretch of the imagination, but its failure to secure a home port will mean that many won't even have heard of it.
Burning Rangers.
There are some who would argue that Sega, the game developer, hit its prime during the last two hardware races it had a horse running in. For a number of reasons, the Sega Saturn failed to ape the success of the Mega Drive, but its failure to strike as significant a chord with gamers wasn't down to Sega not trying, as its software library is evidence of. Burning Rangers was a very late release for Saturn. Available globally in 1998, the same year the Saturn was discontinued, few bought and experienced it at the time, and as a result, it now commands some pretty steep prices. Burning Rangers is a third-person action game that stars two rookie firefighters tasked with entering flaming buildings, putting out fires, and rescuing survivors. It employs a Sonic-style health bar system revolving around crystals, which are not only used to transport people to safety, but also act like gold rings in Sonic. If you take a hit without carrying any, then you die. A unique and intense take on the third-person shooter genre, with stunning visuals and a rousing soundtrack by Nights into Dreams composers Naofumi Ataya and Tomoko Sasaki. It is a terrific parting gift to the Saturn from Sega. Well worth checking out.
Chris, the dolphin was saying something about a monster. This may be the key to saving everyone. I'm gonna find out what he's talking about.
Monster.
Golden Axe, The Revenge of Death Adder.
This arcade sequel to Sega's Golden Axe is the best in the series. Why? Well, it had enhanced visuals, sound and animation, multiplayer support for up to 4 players, branching stages, and an impressive variety of different enemies and magic spells. It also made some slight changes too. The original magic system gets tweaked, and none of the 3 original heroes return, with the exception of Gilius, who joins the party as an unplayable character. Instead, you got 4 more interesting heroes to lead into battle, comprising a barbarian, giant, elf, and a centaurite. Shamefully ignored by Sega since its release, it remains an arcade exclusive, which is why few have played it.
The Typing of the Dead.
A game that probably had most of us thinking Sega might have lost the plot. The Typing of the Dead poked amusing fun at House of the Dead 2 by having players blow away zombies by typing words and phrases as they appeared on the screen. What can inarguably be described as the best zombie edutainment game starring of all time? The Typing of the Dead debuted in arcades, but later received ports to Dreamcast and PC. Naturally best played with the console's keyboard peripheral, and only released in Japan and North America, meant that few have experienced this quirky and humorous mod, which also spawned a Japan-only sequel.
Segagaga.
There aren't many video game companies that will readily poke fun of themselves in order to make a video game. Thank goodness then that Sega was fair game when it allowed Tazo Kano to come up with this nutty tribute to all things Sega. The core plot of Segagaga sees the popular studio in drastic trouble due to the Dreamcast being a commercial failure. Sega only has 3% of the gaming market left and must take control back from the evil dogma and stop it from seizing the entire video game market share. This is achieved by pulling random kids off the street in the hope that they'll be able to do a better job than Sega. Needless to say, you end up playing as one of those kids. Segagaga is a weird hodgepodge of different genres ranging from simulation to shoot 'em up, but it's mainly a RPG. There's a huge amount of Japanese text, making the game extremely hard going if you're not fluent, but you'll want to persevere with it because so much has been lovingly crammed into it. One moment you'll be working alongside a demoted Alex Kidd, the next you'll be battling characters of popular Sega developers or getting a ride off Sonic the Hedgehog. It all finishes with you blasting off into space in a prototype R720 and shooting down all of Sega's previous consoles. A brave, impossibly nutty game that really has to be seen to be believed, even if you don't understand a word of it.
AB Cup.
If you ever wondered what a hang-on and Chase HQ petrol-headed baby would look like, then you can't stop imagining. This relatively obscure arcade release sees you play the role of a futuristic police officer tasked with pursuing fleeing alien criminals before the time expires. With fast, frantic gameplay and some attractive super-scaling visuals, AB Cop isn't the deepest video game on this list, but in terms of serving up some good old-fashioned throwaway Sega arcade fun, it certainly delivers. If you've enjoyed this video, consider supporting the channel monetarily through Patreon at patreon.com/itsapixelthing or using the thanks button below. To keep up with what's going on with the channel, check all my social media stuff by clicking on the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you all in my next video. Cheers!